India and Indonesia are two of the rising Indo-Pacific powers that we talk about a great deal these days. India in South Asia, Indonesia in Southeast Asia. It's a relationship that has seen a interesting amount of growth as well over the last couple of years, whether we talk about the economic side of the relationship as well as defense, as the Indo-Pacific as a region becomes more contested and a much more dangerous and difficult place for the countries in this strategic theatre. Joining us now are Manjeet Kripalani, Executive Director at Gateway House, a Mumbai-based think tank, as well as Yoze, the Executive Director of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, headquartered in Indonesia. Thank you so much for joining us. The two of them have been busy over the last day or so with a track 1.5 dialogue between their two think tanks to see what the emerging areas of cooperation are between India and Indonesia. So let me start with that question to you, Ms. Kripalani and Mr. Damuri. Could you tell us a little bit about what the key topics of discussion are between the two countries, any particular areas of cooperation, whether it's economics or defense, that are particularly standing out to you now between India and Indonesia?
Thank you, Shashank, for having us. This is the first time, India and Indonesia have had 75 years of a relationship, and this is the very first time that we have had a track 1.5 dialogue. It's really quite remarkable that countries that are so similar and that share such a civilizational history of community and commerce have not had this close and warm dialogue before. So in a sense, we've kind of taken each other for granted. However, that has been rectified now, and this track 1.5 is coming up at the 75th anniversary of our relations. We had a very good agenda, and I'm going to ask Yoze to elaborate on the agenda.
Yes, actually, we spent 2 days on this track 1.5 dialogue that involved not only the government officials, but also with multi-stakeholders such as the academics, as well as several other stakeholders from India and Indonesia, including the business sector as well. And we look at from the bigger perspective on the issues of India-Indonesia relations, especially given the current strategic context at the global level and also on the Indo-Pacific. But after that, we look at some more detailed issues, some more details, challenges, and possible collaborations in various areas, including also the military and defense cooperations and security cooperations, from the conventional security cooperations to the newer ones such as the cyber security. We also discuss about the possibility of having greater economic collaborations and cooperations between the two nations. Some areas of possible cooperations have been identified, such as the on trade and investments areas, as well as on the technological and research and developments, as well as on the current issues of energy transitions. Both nations, India and Indonesia, share a lot of interest, and we can try to complement to each other and find some commonalities in order to promote our cooperations.
If I could ask you a slightly specific question, you talked about military and defense cooperation. That's something that has captured a lot of attention in India, because over the last couple of years, we've seen India increase its defense exports. We've seen the very high-profile sale of BrahMos missiles to the Philippines. If you could ask more specifically on the question of defense industry and defense exchanges. Is there any possibility of India selling more defense equipment to Indonesia? Is that something that Indonesia would be interested in? We know that for the last couple of years, the country has been spending billions of dollars in modernizing its own defense industry, acquiring arms across the board to modernize its military. So is there any possibility of something there on the India-Indonesia defense side in terms of Indian arms sales to the country?
Yes, actually, we have a long discussions on the cooperations on the defense area. That includes the possibility of having collaboration activities, joint activities on defense and security. But also we touch upon the possible cooperations that involve military, industrial, the defense industry that currently have been emerging in India. Indonesia is a bit behind India on the developments of defense and military industry, but in Indonesia would like to learn more about it. Not only sourcing the equipments from India, but also collaboratively building the defense industry in both nations, such as joint productions for certain equipments.
And if I could ask you another question on just the economic side of the relationship, let me take advantage of your expertise in economics, Mr. Damuri. We've seen that the trade relationship between the two countries has improved. We know that your country has come up as a major hub, or at least is trying to pitch itself as a major hub for electric vehicles, renewable technologies in that sense. Are there any specific opportunities that have been identified here? There was some conversation a while back as well about ports and Indian companies developing infrastructure in Indonesia. Anything specifically that came up in that sense of the conversation?
We also have the long discussions on that economic cooperations and relations between Indonesia and India there, and we try to identify a lot of areas of cooperations that might be pursued in the future by the two countries, such as, for example, on the critical mineral issues, as well as energy transitions and some technological development. You mentioned also about infrastructure developments. Indonesia and India can have the cooperations in the infrastructure development as well. But the key of our economic cooperation and relation is actually to find complementarities between the two nations. We know that in terms of endowments, in terms of the economic endowments, the two nations share a lot of similarities, and that make trade relations might not be a good option for us in order to elevate our economic relations. We should go beyond trade relations, such as, for example, to have investment cooperation, to have infrastructure development cooperations, as well as to venture to the new areas of industries, such as, for example, on the possibility or the opportunities of having the creative economy, as well as the developments of blue economy that might also be of the interest of the two nations.
Right. Mr. Kripalani, if I could ask you a particular question on the China side of the equation. It's something we hear talked about a lot when it comes to how countries like India and Indonesia are looking at their geopolitical options when it comes to the Indo-Pacific. There's also a lot of conversation about the competition between the United States and China and how India and Indonesia are reacting to it. Did you, in the course of this dialogue, find that there's a lot of similarity in terms of how India and Indonesia are approaching this question, or do you think it's more that the two sides have very, very different approaches to this, just on this question of US-China competition?
Yes, Indonesia has a better relations with China compared to India, for example. But I don't think the China factor should determines our bilateral relations. Although in terms of regional cooperations, I think we cannot really neglect the importance of China. One thing for sure is when we're talking about supply chain, especially in the manufacturing sectors, we need to take into account China more seriously. We try to diversify away from China, which is a good thing. But at the current situation, given the current context, maybe we also need to include China at least in the global supply chain or regional supply chains arrangements that we have, and while strengthening Indonesia and India's relations. Given that situations, again, the inclusion of China might be also a good thing when we're looking at from the regional perspective.
Understood. And just to close off, if I could ask Manjeet Kripalani what she thinks about the view from Delhi when it comes to approaching China. Do you think that there's some commonality with how Indonesia sees China, or this key question of the Indo-Pacific, or do you think that New Delhi and Jakarta have different views of how they look at China?
Well, this is the view from Mumbai. So I'm going to tell you, one thing is that, no, certainly, of course, India has a different view of China. Indonesia is much more embedded in the China supply chain, like most ASEAN countries are. And India has, as we know, just started to resolve some of our issues on the border, and therefore we will start normalizing some of the business activity with China. However, there was quite a lot of talk about, now that India has started to join trade regimes, whether India will be better off, joining RCEP, which does have China, or should India join CPTPP, which does not have China. These global trade regimes India has been a desirable country to join both. It hasn't. And the question is really what we discussed. Do we, as Yoze says, use China supply chains to benefit ourselves? Do we develop our own supply chains between Indonesia and ASEAN and India? Do we draw Indonesia into South Asia supply chains? We are starting to build our own supply chains. Do we draw them in? These were very much in discussion. And also the IPEF, the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum, there has been some talk about how we can explore commonalities within that to see how India and Indonesia can come closer together. And one of the things that these treaties have that really doesn't suit us, and particularly RCEP, is services. India has a lot to give in trade and services. The rest of the world is doing trade and goods. So unless these are included, they're always going to be up for negotiation.
Understood. Manjeet Kripalani and Yoze Damuri, thank you so much for giving us some of your time, explaining what's going on in the India-Indonesia relationship, and for putting together, as Manjeet Kripalani was saying, one of the first Track 1.5 dialogues between India and Indonesia, something that is undoubtedly very useful in helping both countries understand each other better. Thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global, and for watching this show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.